Obviously, realignment is kind of the talk of the town recently, especially in the most recent round, with the Pac-12 and Mountain West trading blows to see who becomes the most stable mid-major conference out west after the Pac-12 added Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, San Diego State, and later Utah State from the Mountain West, proving me wrong entirely about the value of Fresno and Utah State. Or maybe not. We'll see if that was a bad decision later. The Mountain West has, of course, responded in kind, finally taking UTEP from Conference USA after all these years, but leaving behind New Mexico State because New Mexico can't stop making poor realignment decisions. They also made Hawaii a full member since they spent most of their time in the Big West for other sports. While Power 4 realignment continues to drum up a lot of the news cycle, especially with Project Rudy making the rounds, the group of 6 conferences are still clearly running point at the moment. A lot of you guys have recently asked me to do my own preferred realignment, given that conference histories are the main thing I cover on this channel, and I've decided to take it on. So here's my proposal, specifically for non-P4 conferences, and specifically a realignment with less than 12 teams each, so no divisions. I did this so that every team in a conference plays each other to determine their champion, instead of with a conference championship game. That's because the playoff would be the end goal for these teams. The top 8 overall champions would make the top 8 seeds, with the final 4 seeds being wildcard schools. These can be power conference schools who didn't win their conference, or non-power schools who were very good but not part of those 8 best. No more than 2 schools per conference, though. We don't need the SEC or Big Ten stacking their cards. That's boring and not entertaining. In my world, anyway. And finally, bowl games stay because I like them. I toyed with an idea for a 4 or 6 team NIT-style invitational tournament during bowl season for teams that didn't make the playoffs, so let me know what you guys think about that idea. So let's get started with conference number 1 for the non-power conferences, the Big West. Yeah, this conference has Boise State, Utah State, Nevada, UNLV, Hawaii, San Diego State, Fresno State, San Jose State, Sacramento State, and UC Davis. Sacramento State and UC Davis were the only FCS teams I pulled up specifically for this scenario. I was toying with the idea of the Montana schools maybe for this conference, but I decided to go with these schools anyway because I think they're probably the most likely to get brought up in this next round of realignment anyway. Next up is the Frontier Conference. You have Wyoming and Colorado State, their old rivals, New Mexico State, and UTEP. Then you go into Texas a little further with UTSA, Texas State, Sam Houston, and North Texas. Then you round it out with Tulsa. This is a lot of former WAC cast-offs, but definitely a solid conference in its own right. After that, we move on to the Gulf South Conference. A lot of rivalries in here. You start out with Louisiana Tech, ULM, and Louisiana in the state of Louisiana. Moving on further eastward, you have South Alabama, Troy, and Jacksonville State in the state of Alabama, Kennesaw State and Georgia Southern in the state of Georgia, and then App State and Coastal Carolina to round out these teams. Next up, we move on to the Metro South, or really, I guess you could just call this conference the Magnolia Conference, as it has a lot of the same teams I would put in that conference. But you'll notice that a lot of these schools come from bigger southern cities. You have Rice, Tulane, Southern Miss, Memphis, UAB, Georgia State, Charlotte, FAU and FIU, USF, and East Carolina. Now, some of these schools you might remember from the actual Metro proposal. You'll have Southern Miss and East Carolina in there. You'll also notice that Memphis is here. I really wanted to put Memphis in a power conference. Couldn't find where to put them, at least in the 10-team realignment that I have done here. So for now, they're in this Metro South and sort of the not big power conferences here. Next up, though, we get into one of the conferences that really proved to me that 10 teams was not the optimal way of doing it anymore, because I had to split up the MAC. Do you realize how sacrilegious it is to split up the MAC? And I had to do it because the MAC has 12 teams right now, 13 if you add UMass, that really you can't separate because they belong with each other. So for the Midwest Conference, we have Missouri State, Arkansas State, Middle Tennessee, and Western Kentucky. And then some of the MAC schools. You have Northern Illinois, Ball State, Miami, Ohio, Western Central, and Eastern Michigan. Yeah, not exactly the greatest conference here, but trust me, it gets worse here in a little bit when we move on to the Northeast Conference. With the rest of the MAC, you have Toledo, Bowling Green, Akron, Ohio, and Buffalo. But you also have Marshall, James Madison, Old Dominion, Delaware, Temple, and UMass or Kent State. I went with UMass here just to kind of flesh out the Northeast, but I can definitely see a lot of people kicking UMass down to FCS. It's whatever you guys feel like. The military academies are all independents in my scenario here. I think that just makes the most sense for them to be independent. I thought about bringing up some other schools like the Montana and Dakota schools, but decided against it to make it more simple. As you can tell, though, some of these conferences aren't good, like at all. Turns out 10-team conferences are really hard to make cohesive, especially with some of the newer additions to the FBS like Missouri State. But what do you guys think? How would you make these conferences but better? Does 10 teams work better than 12? I'll try to do some more of these, like a video on the Power 4 conferences realigned in this style, and maybe then I'll try 16 teams, or probably 12 teams. Actually, that'll probably be the better one, down the road here, just so I can get more content out for you guys. Working on the SEC right now. That'll be the next big video I put out. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Tell me where I went wrong in the comments below. Be respectful, be kind to each other, and I'll see you guys next time.